necklaces. God,
I've like taken over your role here, man. Blue light glasses, necklaces.
I know. All right.
I don't have the makeup artist yet that you do.
No. Well, you need a makeup and a hair team to get to my level. So
I'd have to grow hair for that.
Right. Yeah. You might have to regrow some of that. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Ash and Jesse. Just got done with my hair and makeup team, so I am all ready to go. Jesse needs to makeup haven't looked too good, but maybe one day. Anyways, we weren't.
You just started breaking up
issues, I guess, last week. Am I?
I don't know if it's on my end or your end. Nah, keep going. We'll see.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. Scheduling issues last week. Couldn't get a time that would work for us, but we are back this week, ready to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop. Joe Biden admits to food price surges and the differences in parenting, and yet another example of the split of the two worlds that we're heading into. So yeah, anything to add before we get started?
Yeah, no, glad to be back. Yeah, last week I was getting ready to go on vacation again, meet my dad and stepmom at the airport. We're restructuring our company. We're launching a new company. And my family was mad at me for the lack of time that I was spending with them, in addition to sort of leaving a lot of the packing and moving on them, as we're also vacating a house and putting stuff in storage. And so it's kind of just impossible for me to find time last week. But now I'm here for a month, so I think we should be pretty consistent over the next several weeks. And, looking forward to touching base here as close to daily as possible. We got some nice guests coming up too. I don't remember the exact schedule on that, but I think at least one of them or two of them is this week. Looking forward to that as well. And as always, check us out over on Rumble, which is our main home. We do not stay on YouTube, as YouTube does not like us because we don't go along with the narrative.
No, we do not. And yes, so we do. We currently have 2 strikes on the channel, and yeah, it's just a matter of time before they kick us off. And I think just you mentioned this I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, but maybe we should just abandon YouTube in general anyways, because we do kind of have to censor ourselves, and maybe the show would just kind of take off if we were sort of unfettered in our speech. So that might be a good idea, just to cut ties and just go. Hey Colette, thanks for joining us.
Isn't it strange to be talking about that? I mean, it's basically free speech, right? It's like like theoretically a constitutionally protected activity, right? That we're having to say, well, hey, shoot, we can't do it this way because, we have to censor ourselves.
Right.
Maybe we do it this other way where, we don't have to censor ourselves. I mean, we're kind of just one step, I guess, removed from, free speech being illegal and being, punished by, jackboots, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me, there was another topic. I sent you a chart of this that I wanted to discuss. Maybe we'll do it on a show later this week, but it's basically I was reminded of it when you said, like, we had to censor ourselves from things that are common knowledge and admitted by the manufacturers of said substances. We're not going to say the word of what these are, but it's like common knowledge that said substances have a whole host of negative side effects, but we can't mention it. And the company that's the manufacturer can come out and say it. They can petition for 75 years before they have to release the data, public knowledge, but then you can't say it on YouTube, otherwise you're going to get kicked off. And it's just an absurd clown show at this point. And so you know, it kind of makes me, it's kind of makes me feel like it's hard to feel bad for these people who are going down this path and destroying their businesses and whatnot. So anyways, all right, let's jump into topics. So here we go. Let me share my screen. And Donald Trump, the New York Times finally admitted Hunter Biden's laptop is real. So former President Donald Trump took a shot at the New York Times during a rally on Saturday after the paper finally admitted Hunter Biden's laptop is real. The Times confirmed the laptop in emails with Ukrainian business associates, an article published on the federal probes into the first son's tax filings were exclusively reported by the Post on October 2020. Just last week, the failing New York Times finally admitted that Hunter Biden's laptop was real. Remember when they said it was done by Russia? Trump said to a crowd of his supporters in Commerce outside of Atlanta. Putin's got bigger problems right now, but he must have thought we were nuts. The 45th president slammed the Times for waiting to publish the report till after the election and significantly before the next election because it's so bad. It's so bad what they did. So, I mean, I don't think we need to go much more into what Trump said about it, but basically the long and short of it is the Bidens with Hunter was, they were engaging in legally questionable activities with people in the Ukraine. It seemed like bribes were taking place. It seemed like pay for play was taking place. It seemed like a lot of nefarious activity was taking place with Ukraine, with the Bidens, with other administrations. And it just goes to show how much lies that were being fed by the mainstream narrative. It touches on, just the lack of information that the side that's paying attention to New York Times and those that side of the political spectrum, they're just not aware of what's going on, because they think, sort of right-leaning news outlets are, racist or whatever they want to throw at them, and therefore they don't pay any attention to them, and they're essentially completely cut off from a whole side of the story, and they have no idea that this is going on. I bet you many people on the left will still think that the Hunter Biden laptop is a non-story. It was all Russia, and that's probably what they're thinking right now.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird thing too. Like, supposedly they found this laptop in like a trash can or something. Or no, I'm sorry. That was a gun. Never mind. That was a gun. This was a laptop.
Crack pipe.
Right exactly, next to in a paper bag next to a crack pipe. But the laptop, I guess, was left at like a repair store or something, and uncovered a couple of years later. I mean, so either that's magic at work, right? That's God at work, sort of assisting in the great reveal, or it's a setup and a fake story, or both. Interestingly enough, that's really the most interesting as we sort of come to singularity here. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great representation and example of the split, right? So, you have the split playing out on all levels, quite literally. And so you have these two realities. You have this reality where these sort of corrupt politicians who are pedophiles, right? And they're into all kinds of stuff that human beings who are connected to their heart and soul would not approve of and not be okay with. And they're doing all kinds of evil shit, and they're, trying to start wars, and they're falsely in office, and on and on and on, right? And so we just see that for what it is, right? And we looking at it, and it's there, and it's obvious, and we're all seeing it, and there isn't really any mystery there per se. It's just kind of, it could play out this way or play out that way. But as far as what's, where that energy comes from, like who these people are, and I maybe put people in quotes there, who these people are is pretty clear. And then you have the split, right? You have like this other reality where, where there's Russia, and there's, right-wing conspiracies, and there's, just all kinds of sort of, just a whole nother narrative, right? And it's very representative of the split. And that's just sort of the 3D manifestation of the split, because we're splitting into two realities. And at the same time, we're in the collapsing of the universes, right? We're in the time where everything collapses into one, into singularity. So part of that is the apocalypse, right? Part of that is all that is hidden coming to light. So we're in that time as well, disclosure, so on and so forth. And so we get to watch, what me and Asher always refer to as a movie, right? We sort of get to watch this kind of split screen movie playing out, where there's two realities. I'm sure there's multiple realities, but there's two sort of distinct realities. And one reality, from our perspective anyhow, right? One reality does keep admitting that it's false, right? Like it keeps telling you, like, oh, we lied again, we're sorry. We lied again, we're sorry. We lied again, we're sorry. And people just go on believing it, which I think actually is part of the goal, right? I think that really actually is part of the, the dark magic show that's taking place, is to get people's consciousness in their minds so warped, so crazy, so bought in, so sort of just disassociated from themselves, from God, from source, from truth, that they'll go along with stuff even when they've been told that it isn't true. Like they'll still believe it, even when, we're at the point, right? I remember people have always said, myself, you, probably others, it's like they won't believe it until it's on their TV. Well, we're at that point now, right? We're at the point where they're admitting on the TV that a lot of these things, all of these things really, are lies, and people go on believing them. And that's kind of, from my perspective, that's kind of part of the game, where it's like the evil wants to rule openly, right? So it has to reveal itself. And if it can get people through this progressive process, A, B, C, D, right, process, where people can disassociate from God, from truth, from themselves, from consciousness, from Christ consciousness, whatever, however you want to describe that, people can disassociate from that so much, to the point where they can be told they're being lied to and still be okay with that, right? They can be told they're being lied to and still go along with the program and the narrative. That's, I believe, part of the goal. And it seems to be on that side of things working. On our side of things, again, and I hate describing it like that, right? Because it's sort of ugly to describe it like that, but that's the language we have. But on our side of things, it's not that world at all, right? It's success, and it's businesses, and it's beauty, and it's family, and it's joy, and it's open times, and more possibilities than ever, and evolution of consciousness, and of body, and of mind, and everything. So that's sort of the split, I think.
Yeah, well, a couple points. Number one, so I think the reveal, it's a lot about consent. They need you to do it to yourselves, because there's not, these jackbooted thugs coming to your door and forcing you to roll up your sleeve or really do anything like that. Nobody's forcing you to take out a loan to get a gender studies degree and go into debt that you can't pay back because you're unemployable after that. Nobody's forcing anyone to do that. And it's always a choice. And the more absurd it becomes, the more lies that that people are just willingly believe, they're active to that level. They're active, and I think that's kind of what it's about for them, because once you've gone down that path of like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess Joe Biden's son is a crack fiend, and he had a bunch of hookers and blow and all that stuff, and yeah, well, orange man bad, so I'm going to vote for Biden. And once you've gone down that path, once you've taken that ticket, it's very hard to, what, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it isn't what I'm being told on TV, or maybe the New York Times is lying to us or something like that. And it's just, the more they can get people down that road, the more difficult it is for them to sort of wake up and start to see reality for what it is. The other question I have is like, is it that obvious, or are we just better and more experienced in seeing the bullshit? Because it wasn't like this for me in, I don't know, let's say 2008 or even 2001, with 9/11 and that kind of stuff. Like I didn't see through that, but now I think I can see an article and oh, well, this is wrong here, and they're doing this because of that, and I can sort of see through the narrative pretty much in real time. And that definitely hasn't always been the case. And so, is it just more obvious, or are we better or more experienced in seeing through this stuff? I wonder what it is. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it's sort of like part of this process has kind of been a training program where it's, where God is sort of walking us through the steps to develop our perception, so that we can be in a point when things get so fast, like they are now and will continue to get faster, where we don't have to spend 6 months processing something before we can wrap our heads around it, right? So I think it's been a progressive process, where we've been sort of in training to be able to right to level up and to have those increased levels of perception, which also go along. I think it's very much in tandem with increased consciousness and increased even DNA activation and all the rest of it. So I think we're quite literally in a evolutionarily sped up time, and that's on every level. So I think we're sort of jumping from I don't know if analog's the right word, but we're sort of jumping from one thing to sort of quantum everything, right? And you're seeing that play out on lots of levels, right? You're seeing that play out in currency with with the invention of blockchain, and you're seeing that, I think, play out on all levels in all kinds of ways in business opportunities. Everything just seems to be much more connected, much more open, much more next level, right? We're removing ourselves from the matrix. And what we're also experiencing is that same sort of quantum development in our brains, right? In our ability to perceive and to understand and to break things down, and just sort of things just to click in without as much mental process. I remember at the beginning of my journey, so to speak, going back to 2010, 11, 12, and there, it would take me months to figure out one subject, right? And now you can just sort of read its energy signature. You can just sort of connect it to all the other stuff, and you just file it in and know where it goes. So I think that's been the training program. And I think the training program has been, for now, the ever present now, but like, especially the now as we keep going here, right? Also because we're in crunch time, right? We're in the final battle almost, so to speak, or the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs. Joe, I've been dreaming of that moment since I was 4 years old. So so here it is, right? On the big stage, the biggest stage of all. So I think our training program, at least from that aspect, has been effective. And I think it's different for different people too. I've definitely seen younger people, especially, who have been able to accelerate that process. I think there's windows that open, right? So, I mean, if you look at the time that you and I sort of woke up, so to speak, a lot of people did during that time, right? That was a big window. Another window was maybe 10 years earlier. I think another window has been in these last couple of years. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost 10-year cycles. But it seems like there's been windows. So I definitely, I know a lot of people in my personal life, they all tend to be in their 20s. But I know a lot of people in my personal, I'm almost 40, I'm 39. So a lot of them are 10, 15 years younger than me, 10 to 20 years younger than me. I know a lot of people in my personal life who their entire process, right? Their entire awakening happened in the last six to 48 months type of thing, or 6 to 36 months or whatever. And so that was a much more accelerated window. And so maybe they don't have all the knowledge I do. In fact, they don't, right? They're not going to understand things of the history and sort of all the connections at the level I do. But in many cases, they might even understand things sort of viscerally, at a higher level than me, right? It just hit them and they just got it. It all just clicked in over the course of 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever, in this window we're in. So I kind of look at it that way.
Yeah. And the more I go down this path, the more, not only is the story and the narrative very similar and easy to pick through, but also the solution is too. The solution always comes back to, personal growth, self-reliance, personal responsibility, community, family, God. It always comes back to that. And so, maybe that's why, I basically didn't look at the news or anything like that, the last week to 10 days. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I think I know what I need to do and continue to need to do. And I spent a lot of the day yesterday working in the garden and all that stuff. So I don't think I need to pay as much attention to the day-to-day details of what's going on around. And I think that's just, something you get with experience, or maybe you just know the path, know the narrative, and that's good enough. So yeah, it's I mean, we didn't have a show last week, so I didn't really look into what was going on. And maybe that's maybe that's nice to unplug from at least the day-to-day news, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost, at least for where we're at on our journey, right? And that does, we're not the most advanced here, right? Like lots of people would be way more advanced on the path and on the journey than we are, of course. But so I think, but where we are probably on the journey, I think that's the stage we're at, right? It's like, it is time to stop paying attention to some degree and to really unplug. And we've been doing that for years, of course, but to really unplug from that stuff, because at the end of the day, the game is for your attention. So, there is an aspect to just paying attention at all to the 3D weirdness and the manifestations, the dark energy manifestations, even if you're laughing at it, even if you're understanding it's not real, right? But there's something to putting any attention into that at all, giving it any energy at all. At some point, I do think there has to be really a full sort of cut of that, because as we advance here, it stops affecting us as we sort of go through this total shift of realities, right? Where that full split, where that reality is no longer part of our experience. And so, an obvious piece to that would be to stop looking at it, right? And I think a lot of us are in that place who are sort of at that point in the journey that you and I are.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last week, I mean, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I mean, you can obviously only unplug so much before, your YouTube feed gets filled with, stories and that kind of stuff. So I think what's going on now, or the attention seeking thing in the news right now, is the Supreme Court thing, where you have a female judge who can't define what a woman is, and who has always, when given the opportunity, been very lenient on pedophiles.
Nice.
Yeah. So so yeah, there's stuff going on there. That would be, yeah. So why don't we talk about that on another episode, because there's stuff to say there. But
Just on the topic of all will be revealed, right? Like, so you're saying this administration currently is nominating a Supreme Court justice who's been very lenient on, sex offenders of that type. Interesting, right?
yes, right. So, and she can't define what a woman is. And so I think that's going to be a topic of an episode. But anyways, let's go on to the next story. Joe Biden, he says, when talking about food prices, it's going to be real. President Biden on war-related food shortages. President Joe Biden said that the world would experience food shortages as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and production increases were subject of discussions at a Group of 7 meeting on Thursday. It's going to be real, Biden said in a news conference in Brussels. The price of sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia, it's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our countries as well. So this is something that we've been talking about for a long time, and I guess it's finally making its way into the news. We've been talking about supply chain disruptions for a variety of reasons, including the disease scare that was happening in the last 2 years or so, including the work. I don't know if work ethic is the right term, but you're just seeing a lot of people and a lot of places just not work as well. And so I think it's the just overall degradation of human beings. I'm hearing from so many people that say, "Oh, I can't find any good people. Nobody wants to work. I can't hire anyone good." I hear that all the time. It's not true for me. We have an abundance of highly qualified applicants for positions that we're looking to fill, but it's certainly true for a lot of other people. That's something I ask a lot of business owners when I talk to them. And, these 2%, 5%, 1%, 3% cuts to whatever aspect of the economy is happening, whether it's shipping or production or people or the cost of an ingredient, raw material, something like that. These cuts are going to start having a huge impact. And then when you have, according to this article, you have, let's see, where is it? Global food prices would continue to rise. Food costs are increasing even before war with Ukraine, driven by higher energy prices, transport bottlenecks, and in some countries, farm labor shortages. For example, we get a product out of Australia. The workers on that farm need to be double jabbed, plus boosted, plus a negative PCR test in order to go to work. And so obviously that product is on back order. So we just can't get it. And, and so now Russia's invasion has triggered further rises and concerns about prolonged disruption in agriculture-rich Ukraine. Ukraine is sometimes known as like the breadbasket of Europe. They produce a ton of wheat. And here is, if you look at the charts here, Commodity prices soar as Russia-Ukraine war deepens. So we have record high prices in wheat, fertilizer, and soybeans. Almost record in soybeans. It doesn't look like it's quite there, but very close. So wheat, fertilizer, and soybeans. So wheat is an ingredient in a lot of products. So is soybeans, and fertilizer is used in just about everything. So if you see these prices go up, it takes a little time before they make their way through the supply chain. And when they do, it's going to have a massive impact on end prices. And so the price of wheat today doesn't necessarily show up on the grocery store shelves tomorrow, but it will 6 months from now, 12 months from now. And same thing with fertilizer. Although fertilizer price, that might take even longer to show up in prices. And so you have not seen anywhere near the amount of price increases that we're about to see in the coming months. So everyone get ready. You know, we've been saying from the beginning to plant a garden, to start localizing your supply chains, especially when it comes to food. And so, yeah, here you go.
Yeah. So right. So first everything was COVID's fault, right? And now everything is Russia's fault and the war. And so for us, how did we know, right, that supply chain issues and inflation, price increases were coming, and that there would be, sort of a collapse of those, collapse might be a strong word for now, but there would be some, disruptions and difficulties with those subjects, before those things happened, right? And so obviously this is nonsense. This is just the sort of narrative goes on, right? And so for people who it's very important to them to continue to buy into the narrative, they have their thing that their mind can latch onto, which is, some stuff's COVID's fault, and now I guess most everything is Vladimir Putin's fault. But yeah, I want to sort of touch on a couple of things. So what's happening is not necessarily, in my opinion. So first of all, food shortage coming. Yes, we've talked about that for a long time. That's clear. But I'd prefer to define it a different way. It's really a product shortage that we're looking at. So for people who are growing food, right, they're not going to have a food shortage. For I live in Ecuador where everybody grows food. Like we're not, we have winter, we have, abundance of food in everywhere. Like there's not going to be a food shortage here. And there's lots of places like that. And there's lots of people who are going to have be abundant in their ability, in their food. What we will have are product shortages. So, if you look at the things that Asher just mentioned, right? Wheat, fertilizer, soybeans. Well, a lot of people would argue that wheat is not something humans should necessarily be consuming, at least in large quantities and in its current form. A lot of people would argue that fertilizer, as it's being referred to in modern day, is highly destructive to the food crops and then the human body. And a lot of people would argue that soybeans are one of the worst things that a human can eat. So, and you could add corn to that and some other things that, of course, governments do what? They subsidize and encourage its production and put it in have it be the base of every product and so on and so forth. So again, right, it's very indicative, it's very revealing, it's very indicative of both the split and the collapse of the matrix, more so than it is indicative of people in a heart-based way living off the land being in trouble, right? The masses who are believing that everything is now Vladimir Putin's fault, yeah, they're going to experience product shortages, including food, and much higher cost and all of that. For people who are living life aligned with God, right, and from a way that understanding that, hey, it's a time to be producing nutrient dense food on my own land or in a community or with neighbors or whatever it is, right, are not going to experience a food shortage. In fact, they're going to experience a shortage of scarcity. They're going to experience abundance, because the value of what they're doing is increasing. So, I remember doing a podcast recently for our Abundant Living Ecuador channel, a real estate company that we have here. And, we're doing like a facts episode. And one of the questions we were answering, if I remember it correctly, was something about, what do you guys think it'll look like in Ecuador if, right? If some of these sort of negative things or quote unquote negative things or sort of worst case scenarios play out. And one of those items was inflation and supply chain and food, right? And it's like people here will be wealthier. That's the main sort of thing that I see, is that people who have lived off the land for the last 1.5 million years, I don't know how long, will be wealthier because the value of their product will be increasing globally. And this is what they do, anyway. So, I think again, it's the split, and it's the collapse of the matrix, right? So yeah, the supply chain, AKA the matrix, issues, the products on store shelves, AKA the matrix, issues, food that is deleterious to your health, issues, people living life the way they should, abundant, right? This is the split. And I think another example of that is what you mentioned about people saying, and you see all these articles, they're obviously pushing this stuff too, sort of the great resignation. And, it's this push into universal basic income, right? It's this push into nobody doing anything, people just being supported and dependent on government for their life. And so you're seeing these articles basically encouraging people to stop working. And then you're also seeing that being encouraged monetarily with like an increase in handouts, right? Through in the States through tax credits and not credits, but bailout. I don't know what they're calling it. They're sending people checks, and so on and so forth. And then you're seeing also what you just described in Australia, right? Making it impossible essentially for people to work. So you're seeing that, and then you're seeing what you just described, which is business owners reporting an inability to find good labor, a labor shortage. Right. And then that's one side. And then there's the side you also described, which is you don't have that. You're not experiencing that, right? I'm not experiencing that either at all. Right. And so why is that? Well, one set of that split is operating inside the matrix. They're not necessarily engaged in activities that the point of which, or one of the points of which, or the energy origin of which is aligned, right? Aligned with humanity, with God, with abundance, with joy, with heart, all these kinds of things. And so in that world, there's a labor shortage, right? And as the matrix collapses, they're in the matrix. In the other world of people who are engaged in activities that people who are activated and aligned are excited about participating in, not only is there not a labor shortage, there's people showing up to volunteer. There's people showing up to just be like, hey, what do you need? Hey, I want to be involved in this. Like, how can I help? Right. So the news is not going to talk about that, right? Like, the articles are not going to talk about that. And so we're here to talk about that, right? Because and YouTube wants us to not talk about that and get us off their platform, because we got to hide the fact that there's this other option. But I think that, again, I think all these things are just a great indication of the split and of the collapse of the matrix and the sort of two worlds idea.
Yeah, it's a concept that I touched on in a previous episode. I can't remember which one, but it's like the micro versus the macro. Like let's say there is a fertilizer shortage, and let's say there is a reduction in the sun's output. Well, if you're talking about the macro food supply, yes, a 2% reduction in the sun's output combined with a fertilizer shortage has some serious impacts on the products that are being able to be produced. Less of them combined with higher prices. But if you take that into the micro and you go look in my garden in my backyard, I don't buy chemical fertilizer. I use compost, and a 2% reduction in crop yield, if I had it, would mean absolutely nothing to me. Like, okay, so I have 2% fewer beets and carrots, and I'm like, okay, I had way more than what I could eat anyways, and so like a 2% reduction, I literally don't even notice it. On my street, there's I don't know, at least two different places that have these like stands by the side of the road during the summer that they're selling vegetables from their gardens. There's a bunch of that stuff right near where I live, and I don't live in a very densely populated area by any means, but yeah, I mean, these people have created abundance in their backyard, and I could probably do that too if I wanted to, but I don't really want to encroach on my neighbors. I would basically just give it away if I could. So yeah, I mean, it's the micro versus the macro. It's the matrix world versus the alive world, and it gets into the split, and that gets to let me read some of the chat first. Hello, Colette. Hello, Stop the Lying. Hey, Darren. Good morning. Hey, Rezu. Brian Dixon says, Kafkaesque is the only way to describe the way the world governments are functioning right now. May we always point out the absurdities. You guys do a great job. Keep on keeping on. So thank you, Brian. And yeah, I mean, it seems like they all went lockstep into the same reaction from the disease that shall not be named, and how to handle that. And you talk to someone in 2010, 2011, like, no, there's no coordination and plans for this. It's all like they're all acting independently, and then when there's an example or an opportunity to see how countries will react if they all go in lockstep or not, they all went in lockstep. And it's like, okay, so Anderson Cooper didn't technically announce this on CNN saying that, hey guys, by the way, it's been going on for a long time, but now all the governments of the world are all acting together as one. That didn't happen, but they still acted in the same way. So it wasn't announced on TV. But do we really need that announcement in order to know what's going on? I would argue no. Terry says, hello, it's a beautiful day today, and I'm thankful that the sky is clear and blue. What a joke the Supreme Court nominee is. Yes, we'll do an episode on that. Darren says, a product like wheat and soy are heavily sprayed. I can definitely do without. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's what are you choosing to put in your bodies? Many people know that wheat, soy, corn, the rest of it are, genetically modified, sprayed with glyphosate and other chemicals, and you don't want to put that in your body anyways. And so, it's the split. Colette says Americans could use a product shortage. Yes, given the weight of a lot of people, I would definitely agree with that. A reminder of how much one needs would be beneficial. Yeah, we're so so delusionally entitled to the lifestyle that has been set up for us, despite having nothing to do with creating that life. It's a recipe for not so good things. And then Claire says, that's what I was thinking. I have only heard of shortages coming in things we don't need. Yeah, right. Absolutely. And again, localized supply chains, especially your food production, and it's such a healthy activity anyways, to get outside, to work in the sun, in the dirt, grow your own food. And it's not only are you eating healthy food, but it's also that cycle of life that you see, and growing your own food. It really does nourish more than just your body, but it also nourishes your soul. And so one of the things that I highly recommend anyone to do, even if it's just a few containers or something like that, put a tomato plant, pepper plant, something like that, and at least get started that way. All
Yeah,
right.
it's right. It's sort of, I guess it's scarcity versus abundance, right? And then it's all about fear. So in the world of the Matrix, scarcity is the sort of ruling factor, which is backed by fear. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg question a bit, but it's about scarcity and fear, right? So God, the other side, right, is abundant, right? Completely abundant, totally abundant, right? You're 100% provided for. And so it's really a decision about which of those options, because they're options, and they can be moment to moment options, they can be periods of your life options. It's not like they're completely binary in the sense that you choose one or the other permanently, but they are binary in another sense, that you can't at the same time live in both. You can shift in and out, but you can't live both in abundance and scarcity at the same time. You can't live both in sort of fear and sort of fluid joy at the same time, right? And so you have to sort of choose, and that's really what I think a lot of the sort of Alex Joneses of the world, and the Ice Age farmer, and all these folks who are out there sort of pushing a kind of doomsday narrative. I think that's why they're sort of allowed to have a platform, right? It's because it doesn't matter if you're awake to everything and you know what's going on, but you're fearful and living in scarcity in the mindset, right? That's not any different than believing that everything's Putin's fault. So I really just want to sort of point that out to people, that what you have to choose is, like, do you trust in God? Do you trust in sort of yourself, right? In your heart, in your just who you are. I mean, right? None of us, we're all going to leave the human body at a certain point. We're not immortal in the human flesh, right? And sort of, do you trust in that, in your destiny, in your path, and in God and abundance and earth and all these things? Or are you scared of not having enough of this or that or the other thing? Are you, worried about World War III? Are you, or if you're really caught up in everything, are you worried about, people being against, female swimmers, male swimmers, women winning female swimming competitions, right? Like
That's racist.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like what do you want to live in? And so, I just want to point that out for people, right? It's not about understanding everything. It's about making a choice between it's about making a vibrational choice as to what you want to live in and therefore experience. And there's enormous magic in shifting into having faith in God, right? And having faith in, like, the journey and the abundance and the life path and the destiny and all these things. That there's doors that open, right? There's this magical sort of doors that open where connections exist that don't exist when you're in fear, right? And opportunities exist that don't exist when you're in fear, and abundance exists that doesn't exist when you're in fear, and so on and so forth. And again, just to drive the point home, there's not a difference between being in fear because CNN told you to be in fear, or being in fear because Alex Jones told you to be in fear. It's the same vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because we are, not fearful, or and we do trust that God will provide and all that stuff, doesn't mean that we're not taking steps to, to make sure that we have food for our families and all that stuff. For example, yesterday I jarred 10 quarts of homemade sauerkraut. So I made sauerkraut in these crocks that I have, and I jarred 10 quarts of it. And so we have sauerkraut for the next few months. And I have a bunch of cabbages planted, and I plan to turn those into sauerkraut when I'm harvesting them, and working on my garden as I explained. And I'm making plans to have it be a 4-season garden, with hoop houses and the rest of it, so I can grow all year round rather than, let's say, 9 months or so. So it doesn't mean that we're not doing things in our lives to help prepare, but it's a totally different energy. And the last thing I wanted to touch on, let's see, is the parenting. So again, this is a world that I just didn't experience in the last 2 years. So Rona parenting has passed the point of absurdity. This was always unsustainable. Now it's simply impossible. And so, imagine a child growing up in this world. Last Thursday, a group of 20 mothers in Boston met up outside a local high school. Their goal wasn't to socialize, drink wine, or even share Rona-related tips. They were there for one reason and one reason only: to stand in a circle, socially distanced, of course. So don't get your don't get all upset with these 20 people gathering in one place. They were socially distanced, so let's take that off the table right now. And scream. So they went there to scream in a circle, but obviously socially distant, because if it wasn't, that would have been irresponsible and unsafe. I knew that we all needed to come together and support each other in our rage, resistance, and disappointment. Sarah Harmon, the group's organizer, wrote on Instagram before the gathering. Ironically, some 20 other moms who RSVP'd yes had to cancel at the last minute because they or other family members had Rona, Harmon told me. When mothers feel there is no more appealing way to spend an evening than to yell into the frigid January darkness, something is wrong, is very, very wrong. Parents in the United States are living through a universally terrible moment. I wouldn't say it's universal. I would say that me and my family are doing probably as well as we ever have. That's if people have been let into our lives and come see us, my kids are healthy, happy, well-adjusted, whatever good term you want to throw at them. And we are having a great time. And so it seems like these people aren't having such a good time. And it's those two worlds that you can choose. You can choose to scream into the darkness, socially distance, of course, or you can say, no, this is a bunch of nonsense, and go about living your lives and maybe take a step back and figure out what's really important. I mean, maybe that could have been something, a productive activity for you to do. But yeah, I mean, here we go. I mean, I feel bad for the children who are growing up in this era.
This whole article is hilarious. I actually read it before I sent it to you, which is rare for me. But just to point out very briefly here, just look at the narrative setting, right? Just look at what they're telling you to believe, right? They're saying these parents did this healthy activity of focusing on how horrible their life is, right? Yeah. And then they're saying like, universally, this is a horrible time to be alive. It's a hard, whatever language they used, right? They're literally telling you, here's the world you should live in, right? Because your beliefs create your reality, your beliefs create your experience. So I just want to point that out before we keep going.
Yeah. For 2 years, we've been spending each and every day navigating an ever changing virus that's threatening not only our well being, but our livelihoods. The situation has reached a fever pitch during this wave when we expected to function normally, even though nothing is normal and none of the puzzle pieces in front of us fit together. Well, gee, maybe because none of the puzzle pieces fit together, it's because it's all nonsense. I mean, maybe that, I don't know. But and also like even if you're in that world and going by their narrative and all that stuff, like the the deadliness and the instances of death and severe illness, if we're believing in what they're saying, was so minor, like so minor, just by even in their narrative to go through all this stuff. It's just, I mean, it from the outside it looks, crazy, yes, comical in a way, a tragic comedy, I guess, because a lot of people are putting their children through, all this crazy stuff. It's just, I couldn't even imagine living in that world, and I would hate I would hate the thought of my children having to suffer through that, if their mother is, my wife is totally not in that world. She is very much in our world and sees essentially the same things as we do. But I can't imagine how a child, 5, 6 years old, who doesn't understand what's going on, be subject to that. It's unimaginable. Anyways, is there more on the article that we need to share?
Well, I know you got to go. The whole thing is absolutely hilarious. It's just an insight, obviously, into the world that's collapsing. So, you know, I think we've touched on that enough. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Don't live in that world. It doesn't look that fun. Doesn't sound that fun. I think there's better options out there.
Yeah, yeah, to say the least. But yeah, I do have to get running. I think we should do one on the Supreme Court nominee. That one there's some stuff there. I think that one is the sort of side thing to take people's attention in one direction. It's kind of like the side story that's going along with the Russia Ukraine stuff. So we should touch on that. And it's a reminder to not get too involved into the nonsense, because there's a lot of nonsense going on there. And yeah, we should touch on that. Any last words before we get going?
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I don't know if this one will stay up on YouTube or not, Asher, but
I think we can. I think this one can stay up.
nice. I like sending links. I don't ever remember to send a link to anyone unless it's right now. So
Right.
so that's cool that one will stay up. But yeah, get over to Rumble. And the all platforms, that's where we'll live. YouTube is heavily censored, and most if not all the videos are taken down after they're live streamed on YouTube. And I guess let's see if I have anything else to put out there. If you're either an investor or have an interesting skill set, there's a lot of opportunities down here, and we're sort of expanding our operations in development projects in agriculture. We sort of build communities through a development company that we have. We also have opportunities in the real estate company, which is like a brokerage house. So yeah, there's Ecuador is a cool place to live that doesn't have, it's a different environment, right, than some places than Australia, for example. um, so if you're somebody like that, I'd be interested in chatting with you, and yeah, look forward to doing some more shows this week.
All right. Yes. abecuador.com if you're interested. So, all right, everyone. We will talk to you again later this week, hopefully. Thanks for joining us. And yes, have a good rest of your day.